A local bar will have to shut down one day next year. A local car dealership is ordered to shut down for 3 days, and a one-day alcohol and entertainment license is granted to the Cape Cod young professionals. Details on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Monday, August 19th, 2013. I'm Sarah Mannell. The Quarterdeck Lounge in Hyannis appeared before the licensing authority at its meeting this morning. Officer Stephen Marr described 5 infractions brought against the establishment.
On June 13th at about 1:30 in the morning, which was a Wednesday night into Thursday morning, I was dispatched to the quarterdeck for a report of a fight. Upon arriving at the quarterdeck, the fight had already ended and another patrol officer was investigating that aspect of the fight. While I was there, I noticed that in the back of the building where the fight had taken place, there was a TV located on a wall, and also in a fenced-in area there was another TV. At the same time, I observed the fact that the TVs were still on and that there were speakers playing music coming out of the back of the building. I then went up to the person I assumed was the bartender and asked him why the TVs were still on and why the music was still being played. And his response was, "What difference does it make?" At that point, I identified myself as a licensing agent of the town and this board, and I advised him that entertainment was required to end at 11:45 in the evening, or 23:45. The bartender's response, and his last name was Wood, was, "So what?" I then asked to go inside the establishment. His response to that was that there was no reason for me to go inside, and I again explained to him that as an agent of the town, I could go inside the establishment. We then went inside the establishment. And as we went inside the establishment, I noticed on the bar that there were several bottles and cans still located on the bar surface and on some of the tables as well. At that point, I asked him why the bottles and the glasses and things were still on the bar, and I asked him when they were supposed to be removed, and his response was, "When I feel like it." At that point, I had a conversation with the officer involved in the fight, and it was determined that the fight, where it was located, there may be some videotape or some cameras that were located that could have videotaped the fight. I then asked the bartender, Mr. Wood, if I could view the video of the fight, and he said that he didn't know how to use the system. I asked if he could contact the owner, Mr. Thompson, who I spoke with on the phone, who also told me that he didn't know how to use the system, but that his wife might. I asked to be provided a copy of that video, which he said that he would do for me. And on the 15th of June, I did receive a copy of the video. However, because of a formatting issue, I wasn't able to view it. Overall, the basic part of this is that the bartender really had no idea about the rules and regulations, and his responses were certainly less than what should have been expected at that particular point.
The owner and manager of the Quarterdeck Lounge, Errol Thompson, defended the bartender present during the alleged infractions, saying the commotion outside the lounge slowed down nightly cleanup duties.
In defense of what the patrolman is saying, if I went through the three complaints against me, or I guess against the establishment, as far as the patio where the televisions are, there are no speakers in the back. There never have been. I have pictures here of the televisions, and they're all behind plexiglass. They've all been there for a number of years, and we've never had a noise complaint ever in the history of the bar. 39 years, we've never had one noise complaint of any type. As far as them not being turned off, the reason they weren't turned off is because the bartender at the time was dealing with the police that were on the premises and all the other commotion. He hadn't turned off the TVs yet. It wasn't a priority at that time. As for the second complaint, I guess it would be the first one. The patrons at the rear of the building were only there because the police were interviewing them or they were blocked by the police cars. As far as a bunch of people loitering at the building, we've never had any issues with that at all. We dispersed people pretty. It was 1:23 and there was no one in the building. When Officer Marr arrived, there was no one in the building except for the officer and the bartender. As for the drinks on the bar, there were drinks on the bar, but we're a very old bar. We don't have a dishwasher. I have photographs here of the system we use. It's a triple sink. And so the bartender had obviously cleared off all the bar tables, and nobody was even in the bar. They were all waiting to be cleaned. The reason they weren't cleaned yet, again, is because Jim Wood was dealing with Officer Marr, asking him questions, et cetera. As far as the video camera, we've been asked a number of times by the Barnstable Police Department to provide video. We've always done it. This was turned in within, 10 hours of the incident itself. As far as the formatting goes, my wife, who is the computer expert in the family, I'm pretty ignorant. Even this is a copy of the format explaining that you can easily, it's pretty simple format, I guess. I don't know. But she provided that. It was on the DVD that was handed to the police department. So, any questions for anybody else?
The licensing authority found the quarterdeck guilty of 4 out of 5 infractions. The bar will serve a 1-day suspension a year from the date of the infraction if no other violations occur before then. An Osterville resident also went before the board this morning. At issue was the number of unregistered vehicles stored at his residential property. Casey DeVincent lives at the property in Osterville and is part owner of the Car Guys in Hyannis. Officer Marr described those violations.
On the 3rd of June, I received a report through the Consumer Affairs Department about a Class 2 dealer, the Car Guys, with a business of 741B Yarmouth Road, that were operated by the 2 gentlemen before you for storing vehicles at a private residence on King Arthur Drive. On the 12th of June at 6:10 in the morning, I went by that residence. I observed 3 unregistered vehicles parked in the driveway at 8 King Arthur Drive. I had also been to this residence in the past, and unfortunately it was about a year and a half ago, and I couldn't find the specific date, but I do recall speaking to a female at that house and warning her that they were only allowed to keep 1 unregistered vehicle on the property at that time. I took photos of it, which I believe you have in front of you. There were 3 vehicles there, a Jeep, a Corvette, and a Camaro. And one of the vehicles, the Camaro, had a sign on it that advertised the Car Guys. Also, about 3 weeks ago, I received a phone call from a mutual acquaintance of ours asking about this particular hearing and what possibly the owners could do to mitigate any ramifications from the hearing. And the one thing that I stressed to him to relay to the 2 in front of you was to ensure that on the morning of the hearing that the number of vehicles parked in the lot did not exceed the number of vehicles that they had on their license. This morning at 9 o'clock, I went to the lot and there was an employee there, and he and I both looked at the license, which states 38 display vehicles, 5 spaces for customers or employees, for a total of 43. And I had the employee count the vehicles on the lot, and there were 49.
DeVincent says he has attempted to make sure all cars that are being stored at his home were licensed.
I'm aware of the 1 unregistered vehicle in the town. On the morning, at 6:10 in the morning, I got the pictures, the cars were there. I was just in the habit of myself and my wife, who we do drive the vehicles home. I usually have the bags as appeared here, but I got in the habit of taking them off at nighttime, and I usually place them in the car before work the next day. Since we became aware of this, we just leave them on. If somebody takes them or they're stolen, so be it. As far as I wasn't made aware that Officer Marr stopped by a year and a half before, that wasn't relayed to me, the message. It might have been a nanny, it could have been my wife. I wasn't made aware.
After hearing both parties testify, the licensing authority found DeVincent guilty of the infraction and ordered his business to shut down for 3 days next week. Also during this morning's meeting, the licensing authority approved a 1-day liquor and entertainment license for the Cape Cod Young Professionals Back to Business Bash that will be held at the Retrix Aerodome September 26th. For Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Mannell.